Rain pounded against the neon-lit windows of Riker's ship as he studied the holographic profile floating above his desk. 30 million credits. The bounty on Nalani Veers and her daughter had tripled in the past week, making it the highest reward he'd seen in 15 years of hunting. Something about this job felt wrong, but credits were credits. The target's image rotated slowly, a striking woman with iridescent violet skin and silver markings that seemed to shift like quicksilver. Her daughter, Arya, appeared human except for those same shifting markings. Initial scans suggested genetic modifications far beyond anything legally permitted in Coalition space. Approaching Nexus Station, the ship's AI announced. Docking procedures initiated. Riker closed the hologram and checked his gear one final time. His nano-enhanced reflexes tingled as he secured his plasma rifle and slipped on his signature black coat. The station's artificial atmosphere would play havoc with his augments, but he'd managed worse. Nexus Station hung like a tarnished jewel against the gas giant below. Once a bustling trading hub, now it served as a refuge for those trying to disappear. Perfect hunting ground for someone hoping to vanish with a child. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder. Riker pulled up his neural feed, scanning station security footage. There, a flicker of movement in the maintenance tunnels, a flash of violet skin quickly concealed. Amateur mistake. They were exhausted, getting sloppy. He moved through the crowded corridors like a ghost, his coat's adaptive camouflage helping him blend with the shadows. The station's residents gave him a wide berth, recognizing a predator in their midst. His neural implants tracked thermal signatures, filtering through the chaos until he picked up their trail. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of pipes and corroded metal, thick with the stench of recycled air. Riker moved silently, years of experience guiding each step. The thermal trail grew stronger. They were close. A child's scream pierced the silence. Riker sprinted toward the sound, rounding a corner to find Nalani cornered by 3 corporate agents in sleek combat suits. Her daughter was clutched protectively behind her, those strange markings now glowing with barely contained energy. "Stand down," the lead agent commanded. "The child belongs to Helix Corporation. Their property, their research. She belongs to herself," Nalani snarled, her own markings pulsing with dangerous intensity. "I won't let you cage her again." Riker should have waited, let them fight it out and collect what was left. But something about the word property struck a nerve. Before he could think better of it, his rifle was up and firing. The first agent dropped with a smoking hole in his chest. The second managed half a turn before Riker's second shot found its mark. The lead agent was faster, cybernetic enhancements evident in his fluid movements. His return fire forced Riker into cover as Nalani seized the opportunity. She thrust out her hand, and those silver markings exploded with power. A wave of pure force slammed the agent against the wall with bone-crushing force. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of distant machinery and Arya's quiet sobs. Riker emerged from cover, rifle trained on Nalani. "Interesting trick." "Please," she said, keeping Arya behind her. "You don't understand what they'll do to her. What they've already done." "You're right. I don't understand." Riker's finger tightened on the trigger. "But 30 million credits buys a lot of willful ignorance." "They'll kill you too," Arya spoke up, her young voice carrying wisdom far beyond her years. "Once they have us, you're just another loose end." Riker's neural implants flagged movement, more corporate teams converging on their position. The station's security systems were being systematically locked down. No coincidence. "How many more are coming?" he asked, decision already made. "At least 2 full strike teams," Nalani answered. "They've been herding us toward their extraction point. There's a reason I'm the best in the business." Riker lowered his rifle. "I know all the blind spots in station security. But if we're doing this, I need to know what I'm really dealing with." What are those markings? Quantum entanglement on a cellular level, Nalani explained quickly. Helix found a way to bind consciousness directly to quantum fields. Infinite energy, perfect genetic memory, maybe even immortality. But the process. She hugged Arya tighter. They don't care how many children they destroy perfecting it. And you? I was their lead researcher. Until I saw what they were doing to the children. Arya was the only survivor of the latest trial. I couldn't. Her voice broke. I couldn't let them continue. The sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels. Time was up. Riker made a show of checking his rifle's charge. My ship's in Bay 7. Think you can keep up? Relief flooded Nalani's face. We can do better than keep up. She took Arya's hand, their markings synchronizing into complex patterns. Ready, little one? Arya nodded, a fierce smile replacing her tears. The air around them began to ripple with contained power. Show me, Riker said, allowing himself a predatory grin. The hunter had just become the hunted, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. They ran together through the darkness, corporate forces in pursuit, as the station's artificial night cycle cast everything in shadows. But in those shadows, silver markings gleamed like stars, holding the promise of either humanity's salvation or its doom. Riker had chosen his side. Now they just had to survive long enough to see it through. The Helios drifted through the quantum wake, its stealth systems straining to mask their signature. In the ship's cramped medical bay, Nalani's markings pulsed weakly as Riker's medical drone treated her wounds. Arya hadn't left her mother's side, those small hands glowing as she somehow accelerated the healing process. Your ship's actually clean, Nalani remarked, surprise evident in her voice. No tracking devices, no hidden protocols. That's rare for a bounty hunter. Trust issues. Riker checked the drone's readings. Occupational hazard when everyone's trying to kill you. Speaking of which, time for answers. The full story. Arya looked to her mother, who nodded. The child closed her eyes, and suddenly the medical bay dissolved around them. They stood in a stark laboratory, but the edges seemed to shimmer like a heat mirage. Quantum memory projection, Nalani explained. We're seeing Arya's memories. Scientists in Helix Corporation uniforms moved through them like ghosts. In the center of the lab, dozens of stasis pods contain children of various species, all bearing early versions of the silver markings. Warning alerts flashed as pod after pod flatlined. They called it Project Ascension, Nalani's voice cracked. The theory was sound: use quantum entanglement to enhance human consciousness, create the next step in human evolution. But the process was killing them. Every failure, every death, they just took notes and adjusted the variables. The scene shifted to a private office. A holographic figure Riker recognized as Thomas Drake, CEO of Helix Corporation, spoke to a younger Nalani. The quantum binding process works. We're close to cracking immortality itself. A few sacrifices are acceptable. They weren't sacrifices, Arya's small voice carried centuries of anger. They were children. My friends. The memory dissolved, returning them to the medical bay. Riker's neural implants struggled to process what they'd witnessed. That's why the bounty's so high. They're not just covering up crimes, they're protecting their immortality research. Worse. Nalani sat up, her wounds nearly healed. The quantum binding has evolved. Arya and I can do things they never predicted. Access quantum fields directly, manipulate energy and matter. With enough training, we might even be able to alter reality itself. And they want to weaponize it. Riker's tone was flat. He'd seen enough corporate wars to know how this played out. A proximity alert blared through the ship. On the bridge monitors, a massive carrier emerged from quantum space, sleek, predatory, bearing Helix Corporation's logo. "Attention unregistered vessel," a cold voice transmitted. "This is Director Jensen of Helix Corporate Security. Return our property immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Riker's hands flew over the controls, plotting quantum trajectories. "Your property has some suggestions about where they can shove that offer." "Wait." Arya placed her hand on the ship's console. Her markings synchronized with the ship's quantum core, and suddenly the navigation display showed impossible paths, routes through quantum space that shouldn't exist. "Can you follow those coordinates?" Nalani asked. "Can a Cerulean drink?" Riker's grin was fierce. "Everyone strap in. This is going to get interesting." The Helios dove into quantum space just as the carrier opened fire. But instead of the usual quantum tunnel, reality itself seemed to twist around them. Aria's power merged with the ship's systems, forcing open paths between the quantum threads that held the universe together. They emerged in a debris field circling a dying star. Ancient shipwrecks created a maze of twisted metal and frozen corpses. The perfect hiding place. "They'll still track us," Nalani said quietly. "The quantum binding creates a signature they can follow, given time. Then we need a plan." Riker brought up star charts. "And I think I know where to start. Ever heard of the quantum underground?" "Rumors. A network of scientists and rebels working against corporate control of quantum technology." "More than rumors. I've done jobs for them. Strictly off the books." Riker highlighted a location. "There's a hidden research base in the Calcinus Nebula. If anyone can help us understand what you and Arya can really do, it's them." "And if they're as bad as Helix?" Arya asked. Riker looked at the child who carried both humanity's potential salvation and destruction in her genes. "Then we burn that bridge when we come to it. For now, we dash." Warning klaxons screamed. The carrier had followed them through their impossible quantum jump. Director Jensen's voice crackled through their comms, distorted but triumphant. "Impressive trick with the quantum paths. But did you really think we couldn't track our own technology? Stand down, Nalani. You know there's nowhere in this universe you can hide." "Maybe not this universe," Arya whispered, her markings beginning to pulse with blinding intensity. "But what about the spaces between?" Nalani's eyes widened. "Arya, no. The power required, it could kill you. Trust me, mother." The child's voice echoed with ancient knowledge as her consciousness reached into quantum realms humans were never meant to touch. "I can do this." Reality buckled around them as Aria's power surged through the ship. The carrier opened fire, but the energy beams bent and twisted in impossible ways. Through the view screen, Riker watched space itself begin to tear open, revealing something else. Something beautiful and terrible and utterly beyond human comprehension. As they plunged toward that impossible breach between universes, Riker realized he'd crossed a line. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about revolution, about the very future of human consciousness. And somehow, he'd ended up right in the middle of it. The ship screamed as reality dissolved around them. Aria's power enveloped them in a cocoon of quantum energy as they dove into the unknown. The last thing Riker saw before everything went white was Director Jensen's carrier being torn apart by the forces they'd unleashed. Then there was only light, and the sensation of falling between the very atoms of existence itself. Emergence into normal space felt like being born again. The Helios materialized in an unfamiliar star system, its hull creaking from stresses it was never designed to endure. Arya lay unconscious in her mother's arms, her markings dim but steady. The quantum breach had collapsed behind them, sealing them off from their pursuers, and everything else they'd ever known. "She's breathing," Nalani whispered, cradling her daughter. "But her quantum patterns are chaotic. She needs time to recover." Riker's neural implants were screaming with corrupted data. He shut them down one by one, relying on his natural senses. Any idea where we are? Not where. When? Nalani's voice trembled. The quantum signatures, we didn't just move through space. We've jumped at least 50 years into the future. Before Riker could process that, proximity sensors detected approaching vessels. 3 of them, massive and unlike anything in his ship's database. A transmission cut through their stunned silence. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Your quantum signature matches Helix Corporation technology. Prepare to be boarded. Fantastic, Riker muttered, bringing weapons online. Out of the frying pan. The ship surrounded them, their designs both beautiful and alien. Energy fields immobilized the Helios, and Riker felt the distinctive shudder of a boarding tube connecting. Armed figures in crystalline armor emerged from the airlock, human in shape, but their skin rippled with familiar silver markings. Their leader removed her helmet, revealing features that made both Riker and Nalani freeze in shock. She was older, but unmistakable. "Hello, Mother," Arya, now a woman in her prime, said softly. "I've been waiting a long time for this day." The next hours passed in a blur of revelations. They were brought aboard the flagship, where an older Arya explained what had happened. Their quantum jump had indeed hurled them 50 years forward, but Arya's consciousness had somehow remained in both time frames, experiencing both lives simultaneously until they converged at this moment. The quantum binding evolved far beyond what Helix ever imagined, she explained, leading them through corridors lined with advanced technology. It gave us access to time itself. I used the decades to build this, to prepare. She gestured around them. The Quantum Collective. A society of enhanced humans and aliens working to protect the universe from corporate exploitation of quantum technology. And Helix? Riker asked, noting how many of the crew bore marks of combat experience. Still out there. Still hunting. Older Arya's expression hardened. They found other children to experiment on, created their own quantum-enhanced soldiers. We've been fighting a shadow war across time and space itself. Why bring us here? Nalani asked, still holding her younger daughter's unconscious form. Why now? Because this is the nexus point. The moment everything changes. Older Arya activated a holographic display showing countless timeline branches. In most possibilities, Helix succeeds. They weaponize quantum consciousness, turning it into a tool for eternal corporate dominance. Humanity becomes enslaved to immortal executives, trapped in an endless cycle of exploitation. But our jump changed things, Riker guessed, studying the shifting timelines. It created a chance. A single branch where we might win. She zoomed in on one timeline, showing massive fleet battles and worlds torn apart by quantum weapons. But we need your help. All of you. An alarm blared through the ship. A tactical officer rushed in, her markings pulsing with urgency. Multiple quantum breaches detected. Helix vessels emerging, they've followed your temporal wake. How? Nalani demanded. The breach collapsed. They've had 50 years to prepare for this moment too, older Arya said grimly. They were waiting for us to reveal ourselves. She turned to Riker. I know what I'm asking. This isn't your fight. Riker checked his weapons, a slow smile spreading across his face. Actually, I think it's been my fight since the moment I chose not to collect that bounty. He glanced at Nalani. Besides, I've got 50 years of interest to collect on that 30 million credits. Space itself seemed to tear open as Helix warships emerged from quantum space. Their designs were nightmarish, twisted by decades of weaponized quantum technology. On their hulls, corrupted versions of the silver markings pulsed with malevolent energy. Young Arya stirred in her mother's arms, her eyes opening to meet her older self's gaze. Understanding passed between them, past and future united in a single purpose. Time to choose, older Arya announced to her crew. Do we run and preserve our safety, or do we stand and fight for humanity's soul? The quantum warriors of the collective stood straighter, their markings brightening in response. Riker took his place beside them, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. The next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the fate of consciousness itself. As the first shots of the quantum war lit up space around them, he realized that sometimes the biggest bounties weren't measured in credits. Sometimes they were measured in the chance to change the very course of human destiny. The battle raged across dimensions, quantum weapons tearing holes in reality itself. The collective's ships danced through the chaos, their crews' markings allowing them to predict and navigate the quantum turbulence. But Helix's forces were relentless, their corrupted quantum technology warping both space and time around them. In the collective flagship's command center, young Arya watched in fascination as her older self coordinated the defense. The two versions of herself had formed a unique quantum link, their shared consciousness multiplying their power exponentially. Nalani worked alongside them, her scientific expertise helping to counter Helix's attacks. Riker, meanwhile, had taken command of a strike team. His neural implants, though primitive by future standards, gave him an edge in coordinating tactical responses. Their flagship is pushing through Sector 7, he reported, studying the quantum battlefield. They're trying to establish a temporal anchor point. If they succeed, they can rewrite this entire timeline, older Arya confirmed. We need to dash. She was cut off by a massive explosion. A quantum torpedo had breached their shields, tearing through multiple decks. Emergency force fields snapped into place as damage reports flooded in. Direct hit to the quantum core, an officer shouted. Containment fields failing. Young Arya stepped forward, her markings blazing. I can stabilize it. No, both Nalani and older Arya said simultaneously, but the child was already reaching out with her power. The quantum energy responded, swirling around her in complex patterns as she forced it back into alignment. Through their neural link, Riker felt the strain she was under. She can't hold it alone, he warned. She's not alone. Older Arya joined her younger self, their combined power creating a quantum feedback loop that rippled through the ship. Nalani added her own strength to the mix, the three of them forming a trinity of power that stabilized the failing core. But the effort had cost them. Young Arya collapsed into her mother's arms while her older self staggered, blood trickling from her nose. The Helix ships pressed their advantage, quantum beams carving through space toward them. Wait, Riker said, noticing something in the tactical display. Their attack pattern. I've seen this before. He zoomed in on the Helix flagship. They're not just trying to establish a temporal anchor. They're trying to reach something specific in the past. Older Arya's eyes widened in understanding. The original quantum binding experiment. If they can secure that moment in time, they can ensure their version of the future happens, Nalani finished. All of this, everything you've built, would never exist. A transmission cut through their tactical channels, a face Riker recognized from Arya's memories. Thomas Drake, aged but unchanged by the decades, his own skin now bearing corrupted versions of the quantum markings. Did you think you were the only ones who could play with time? Drake's voice carried the weight of decades of obsession. Surrender now, and I'll ensure you have comfortable positions in the new timeline. Resist, and you'll never have existed at all. Young Arya stirred in her mother's arms, her voice weak but determined. He's lying. I can feel it. In his timeline, we're all just weapons. Tools for corporate profit. Then we stop him. Riker's tone left no room for argument. Here and now. How? Nalani demanded. Their quantum technology has evolved just like ours. They can match anything we throw at them. Maybe not everything. Older Arya shared a look with her younger self. The quantum binding was never meant to be weaponized. It was meant to elevate consciousness, to help humanity evolve. What if we stopped fighting it? Understanding dawned in Nilani's eyes. A complete quantum resonance. Linking not just our consciousnesses, but everyone's. Showing them the truth across all timelines. It would take impossible amounts of power, Riker warned. Even with both Arias working together. Then we'll need help. Young Arya stood shakily, her markings beginning to pulse. Everyone who believes in a future free from corporate control. Every consciousness that wants true evolution, not just weapons and profit. Throughout the collective fleet, quantum-enhanced humans and aliens felt the call. Their markings brightened in response, forming a vast network of interconnected consciousness. Even some of the Helix soldiers, seeing the possibility of a different path, joined their power to the growing quantum web. Drake's voice came again, now tinged with fear. What are you doing? Stand down immediately. We're doing what the quantum binding was meant for, older Arya declared. We're taking the next step. Together. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as past and future versions of Arya joined hands. Nilani added her power to theirs, and Riker felt his neural implants surge as he too was drawn into the quantum resonance. Throughout both fleets, thousands of consciousness merged into a singular purpose. The universe trembled on the edge of transformation. And in that moment, humanity faced its ultimate choice: corporate control or true transcendence, profit or evolution, chains or freedom. The quantum storm was about to break. The quantum resonance expanded outward like ripples in the fabric of spacetime itself. Through the vast network of connected consciousness, Riker experienced fragments of countless lives, the hope of the collective's warriors, the doubt gnawing at Helix's soldiers, the pure potential radiating from both versions of Arya. Even his neural implants were transformed, quantum energy replacing digital signals with something far more profound. Thomas Drake fought against the connection, his corrupted quantum markings flaring as he tried to maintain control. You'll destroy everything we've built. Centuries of progress, wasted on your utopian dreams. No, young Arya's voice echoed through all their minds. We're building something new. Something real. The quantum web reached critical mass. Through their shared consciousness, everyone connected to the resonance saw the truth, not just of the present moment, but of all possible timelines. They witnessed worlds where Helix's vision had triumphed, where immortal executives ruled over an enslaved humanity. But they also saw possibilities where quantum technology had fulfilled its true purpose, elevating consciousness beyond corporate greed and digital limitations. The choice was always there, older Arya projected. In every timeline, every moment. Evolution or control. Freedom or profit. We choose freedom. Drake made one final attempt to secure his timeline, ordering his flagship to fire its quantum weapons at full power. But his own crew, now aware of the larger truth, refused. Throughout the Helix fleet, soldiers laid down their weapons as their quantum markings resonated with a new purpose. The energy building between both versions of Arya reached impossible levels. Nilani supported them, her scientific mind helping to channel the power. Riker's tactical experience helped coordinate the vast network of consciousness, preventing it from collapsing under its own weight. It's time, young Arya declared, her small hand clasped in her older self's grasp. Time to rewrite the rules. Reality shifted. The quantum binding process that had started everything transformed, no longer a tool for corporate control but a bridge to humanity's next stage of evolution. The silver markings on everyone connected to the resonance changed, becoming something newer and truer. Drake's corrupted markings burned away as the pure quantum energy swept through him. "What have you done?" he gasped. "We've set it free," Nilani answered. "All of it. The quantum binding, human consciousness, time itself. No more experiments. No more weapons. Just potential. The transformation rippled outward through space and time. On countless worlds, in laboratories and corporate facilities, the quantum binding process rewrote itself. The change was subtle but profound. The technology could no longer be forced or weaponized. It had to be freely chosen, freely shared. As the quantum storm subsided, both versions of Arya remained. The timeline hadn't been erased or overwritten, but transformed. Young Arya looked at her older self with new understanding. "We don't need to fight time anymore," older Arya said softly. "All paths are open now." Riker's neural implants had evolved into something new, quantum circuits replacing digital ones. He could feel the larger connection, but his consciousness remained his own. "So what happens now?" "Now we build," young Arya said, her power harmonizing with her older selves. "Not just a resistance or a collective, but a new way of being. Together." Nalani embraced both versions of her daughter, their markings singing in harmony. Throughout both fleets, transformed humans and aliens began the work of dismantling the old power structures and building something new. Drake and his loyal followers were taken into custody, their corrupted quantum powers transformed into something cleaner. They would face justice, but also the opportunity for redemption. "You know," Riker said to Nalani as they watched both versions of Arya begin teaching others to use their new abilities, "I never did collect that bounty." She laughed, her markings shimmering with genuine joy. "I'd say you found something more valuable." "Yeah." He felt the quantum web humming through his enhanced consciousness, full of possibility. "I guess I did." The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if reality itself was celebrating its newfound freedom. Humanity had taken its next step, not through corporate control or artificial limitations, but through the simple choice to evolve together. And somewhere in the quantum web, in the space between moments, a bounty hunter who had chosen consciousness over credit smiled. The hunt was over. The real journey was just beginning.